Hey, everybody. My name is Jason. I'm in my fourth year of civil co-op, and I volunteer for a number of student groups on campus. As well, I'm currently doing my work term with the Department of Traffic Safety for the city. So I'll be one of your moderators tonight for the Civil A panel, along with Erica Hurl. So if you have any questions for the panelists, please type it in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it. So, Erica, you have the floor to introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. My name is Erica. Like Jason said, I'm also in my fourth year of civil co-op. I volunteer with the Civil and Environmental Students Group here on campus as one of our vice presidents. Currently, I'm also on work term. I am working with PCL at the Calgary Cancer Center in Calgary. I will be watching the chat, so if anyone asks any questions, I'll make sure to write them down and get them to Jason.
All right, so how it's going to work is y'all are going to type the questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to direct those questions to our panelists. Also, make sure you're typing in the session chat, not the event chat. I know a few people maybe got that mixed up. So I guess let's get started. As a sort of introduction, we'll get the panelists to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Serena. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries. Hi, I'm Serena Kulmatyski. I graduated in 2014 with a degree in civil engineering, and now I work for as a project manager for a pilot company. Yeah, so that's it.
All right, let's go with David next.
Hi, I'm David Sirois. I am a 2015 civil traditional grad. Currently working as a structural engineer in existing buildings, so fixing, renovating, you name it. I just love it. Good times. Yeah. Currently living in Edmonton, loving it. Enjoying all the challenges of working from home. But that's me.
Awesome. Well, let's pass it on to Scott.
I'm Scott LaBuick. I graduated in 2018 with a civil engineering degree, co-op. I currently work in the land development industry, so it's a nice slow time of the year for us because we can't build much due to the weather, so mostly just designing and working from my basement, which I'm sure is the reality for a lot of other people too, so yeah.
Let's pass it on to Veronica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Barton. I did my traditional civil degree, graduated in 2011, and then continued on and did a master's in construction engineering, management, and planning at the U of A. Graduated from that in 2013. Started working for Graham Construction right after. I'm currently a project manager with Graham Construction in their buildings division. So really any occupied building, hospitals, schools, high rises are the kind of projects that I've worked on. And I guess something else, I'm a mom. I have 2 young boys, toddlers. If you hear them, I'm sorry, they're not in bed yet. So that may come through, but that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Right, and last but not least, Lam.
Holy man, I am the old man in the room. I think I've been practicing longer than most of you have been alive. So I'm in my 25 plus years of professional practice. I hold a Master of Engineering in Structural Engineering from the U of A. I've been a consultant, a business owner, contractor. I've also currently working directly for the owner. I'm the civil structural SME at Enbridge. It seems like I've sat on all 4 sides of the box that encompass our industry. So hopefully I could be of some help to you tonight.
All right, great introductions. Looks like we have a pretty diverse crowd here tonight. Let's start with a little bit of icebreaker questions. So there's we have 3 questions for each panelist to answer. So first question is, tell us about your University of Alberta experience. describe your current job. Second question is, how did your time at the U of A prepare you for your engineering career? And third question is, if you could go back and change one thing about your journey at the U of A, what would it be? So I know that was quite a mouthful. So just to recap, your experience at the U of A and where you are now, your time at the U of A and how it prepared you for your engineering career, and if you could go back, what would you change? So I guess we'll go in the same order, and we'll start with Serena.
All right. Well, I'm not really sure what to say about my university experience. I've been going through it, although not very traditionally at the moment. But I went into university right out of high school, and I came from a small town, so it was quite a big change. Had to adapt pretty quick. And I participated in some extracurricular stuff like ski trips and gear week and intramurals and stuff, which I think was really valuable. But the most valuable was I chose to do co-op, and I think that ended up being a really valuable experience for me. And my current job, sorry, that was the second part of that question. My current job is I work for a small piling firm here in Edmonton. And because it's kind of small, it's nice. I get to do a lot of different stuff. I get to do, mostly project management, but I also do some estimating, some design work. I get to do a little bit of everything, which is awesome. Yeah. Do we want me to go through all three questions, or?
Yeah, I guess we could do that.
Okay, that's a lot of talking. My time at the U of A, again, like I said, I think co-op is the thing that was most valuable to me in my career, because I got to forge a lot of connections with people and developed a lot of good contacts and a lot of good experience as well in different fields. And then if I could go back and change one thing, I would participate in more clubs and stuff. The stuff that I did participate in was really valuable to me all the way through. So I would definitely do more of that.
Okay, let's pass it on to David.
Great, thank you. So my U of A experience was pretty a little bit similar. So I came from Red Deer up to Edmonton. For those that don't know, Red Deer's a smaller city, about an hour and a half drive away from Edmonton. So moved up to the big city, and my first year I actually did French. It was a French program through Faculté Saint-Jean. And so I was able to take quite a few of my first year courses through there, which was really nice because it was a small class size. And then I still had, I think I had like Eng 130 and Eng Comp and a few other courses at the main campus. So it was a nice little transition for me from kind of high school size classes, high school pace to university pace, which was really nice. And I guess, yeah, then I plugged my way through my 4 years and had a few hiccups here and there, but I made it out clean on the other side, which was really kind of the goal at the outset. And so at the end I lucked into a job as a structural engineer, and I worked in my first job for a couple of years. Doing lots of new building design, a little bit of renovation, existing buildings type work. Unfortunately got laid off from that job, and then a couple months later I landed in the job that I'm currently in. So and it was great for me. It was a great fit. Got to do a lot of the stuff that I learned. I did the odd reno and restoration kind of project in my first job, and I did really like that. So I got the opportunity to go into that kind of full bore with the second job. And I'm still there, still plugging away at that, and I'll be there 4 years in this July. So how did my time at the U of A prepare me? So I think a lot of it was learning how to bounce back from setbacks or failures or whatever. So um, I think it's pretty common that a lot of people coming into engineering out of high school are probably quite successful as high school students, and you don't necessarily experience a lot of struggle through school. And I'm sure some do, but um, at least in my experience, I kind of breezed through high school really easy, and then university wasn't so easy. Namely, my big setback that I really attribute a lot of my success to is actually failing a course. So I failed a second year math course, and I'm here now. It wasn't the end of the world. So that was honestly probably the biggest lesson. And even out of that, I met some really great friends who I consider to be lifelong friends. So and then if I could go back and change one thing about my personal journey at the U of A, so as I mentioned, I got through high school pretty easy. I thought I was like the smart guy. Turns out I wasn't, because the real smart people were the ones that knew how to ask questions, and they knew how to collaborate with others, and they had the humility to be inquisitive and ask for help when it was needed, because previously I had just worked my way through a problem and hadn't had to struggle too much. So I just thought that would get me through university, and it did, just not necessarily as smoothly as I would have liked to. So I think, yeah.
Awesome. That was very insightful here. We will pass it on to Scott now.
So I guess in terms of my university experience, I would say, yeah, similar to David's, you come in and you face a reasonably harsh reality right off the hop. Yeah, it's a long road that you're looking down. So it was a battle, like I think everyone else experiences in university, but I learned kind of in my last couple years how important it was to try your best to kind of insert some life balance and look for more opportunities to volunteer or try something different and mix things up amongst all the academic work. So I was with the ESS for a little bit in my last few years of university, working with a professional development group. And we actually tried to do a bit of a professional development speaker series, which was really great, really great experience at the end of the day. I had learned a lot and made some great connections that I otherwise wouldn't have. Coming out of university, I've worked for almost 3 years now with Select Engineering Consultants. So we're a land development consultant here in Edmonton. We design and construct residential, commercial, industrial projects throughout the Edmonton region. And I mostly take care of the on-site construction work. So everything from working with the contractors on site, surveying, coordinating, all that stuff. And then in the winter, some more design-related construction closeout stuff. In terms of what I learned in university, I would say the biggest things were time management, because you don't really have any other choice but to learn time management. Overall work ethic, I think that was really important. That was a great lesson for me as well. And then the biggest one I would say is learning how to learn. So through those struggles, through those setbacks, you really learn how you operate and what resources you have and what resources you might have to look for to be able to get through those difficult times or those difficult situations. So I think it was a good opportunity for me to learn more about myself and how I operate, which has helped a lot in my job now, because I know how to move forward. I know when I need help and all that stuff. And then the last question, what was the last question? If I could go back and change one thing, Um, I would say the biggest one would be networking. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this before. And it is true. It's not a redundant thing that everyone's just being told to tell you. It's actually true. A great example is what's happening here tonight. You know, like if you happen to email out of the blue or LinkedIn message any single one of us on this call tonight, we would probably in a heartbeat set up a coffee with you, probably virtual for the time being. But I guess what I'm getting at is professionals in the industry are usually more than happy to help you out and answer your questions when you're a student. It's a great time to leverage this because everyone is willing to help you. So, you know, even if it's attending a networking event, cold messaging, like I just said on LinkedIn or an email, just reaching out to different people, learning about your industries, learning about your options is massive because it can lead you to a lot of different job opportunities or just overall learning about an industry you might not have known about. So yeah, that's my spiel for now.
God, thank you for that. So we'll pass it on to Veronica.
Yeah, so my time at the U of A, I did do a number of things outside of my degree. Volunteered for campus ambassadors, Heart of the City piano program, was involved with the civil club. Not really ever more than one or two at a time, but I did do quite a few over the course of the degree. And for me, it was really a way to motivate myself to get my schoolwork done, I guess, in a weird way, keeping myself busier. If I knew I had something coming up, I knew I had to be in a meeting at 7 o'clock or had to do a tour at 10, just motivated me to get stuff done so that I could go do those things and kind of keep up that balance a bit. When I got to the end of my fourth year, I was done. I was so ready to be done and out working. And I had a few interviews, but didn't really have anything where in the field I wanted. I knew I've known since like grade 6, that's another story, but that I've wanted to build things and build buildings in particular. So wasn't really getting any opportunities where I wanted. A friend of mine was like, hey, I'm going to do my master's. Come check out this info session with me. So I went thinking like, I'm done. I'm not going to do any more years of school, and then signed up to do my master's for 2 more years. So through my master's program, I got connected to various general contractors in the city, got to do some research with some of them, and ended up with my connection with Graham. And that's where I started working. I started as a project coordinator, moved to a senior project coordinator, and now project manager. I've done office building, a lab building, some warehouses, a few schools, currently on a restoration of a school. It's my first reno job. It's interesting. New builds are definitely, in my opinion, a bit easier than those reno jobs, but the reno jobs are a bit more fun with the challenges that they present. In terms of how the U of A prepared me for my career, I think my master's degree definitely prepared me more in terms of the technical side of what I do and more of the content. But still, most of what I needed to know on the job, I learned on the job. I didn't learn in school. What I learned in school was similar to Scott and what some of the other panelists have said, is just those time management skills, those communicating with people, especially in my master's program. I was the only Canadian female in my program. There were a lot of international students. And a huge thing that I learned, everything was group work. You didn't get to pick your own groups, which is true for the workforce. And often you'd have 2 different people from 2 different countries who spoke 2 different languages, saying the same thing, but not understanding each other. So there was a lot of my master's degree that I spent mediating conversations because English is my first language. And that has served me well in my career as well, because a lot of construction management is resolving disputes and conflicts and trying to get to the solution. So yeah, I think the U of A, the degree really gave me more of those softer, non-tangible skills as opposed to technical skills. And a lot of the technical stuff I learned once I started working in the field that I'm in. And if I could go back and change one thing, I think it was one of my 3 comments, but I would definitely do more career fairs and pay attention. I went to career fairs for the free stuff. I went for the Eng paper and the pens and all the free stuff, and didn't spend a ton of time actually talking to companies and learning about the difference between an owner and a consultant and a contractor, and what general contractors do, and all the different options that are available. So if I could go back, that is, I am lucky I stumbled into a field that I absolutely love. But if I could go back and change one thing, I would learn a lot more about the different fields and different paths.
Thank you for that. We will pass it on to Lam.
Wow, I could tell you that, man, am I old. Just listening to you guys, look, you guys are, the panelists there has more in common with the audience than I would. During my time at the U of A, there wasn't parking lots, so there would be big, large trees that you tie your dinosaurs to. And so after you tie your dinosaurs, that's when you start getting out that hammer and chisel and start learning. But kidding aside, so my time at the U of A was awesome. I can't emphasize it enough. It was lots of, back in the day, it was lots of drinking, partying, intramural sports. I don't know if you guys still do that anymore. And of course, a lot of studying. So lots and lots of studying and homeworks and labs and seminars that you guys have. So that I don't think has changed much. So again, U of A was probably best time of my life and some of the most stressful and worrisome of my life as well. The instructors and professor at the U of A at the time were world renowned. Some of my professors, they passed on. They're the guys that started the essentially the program that you guys are learning now. And so with that, they did prepare me for the basics of what is required to start working as an engineer, as a structural engineer, as a civil engineer. Everything that your prof and everybody else tell you, you learn about 10% of what you need to know from school. The rest is on-job training. And so that's in terms of whether it's self-learning, reading research papers, or most of it would be on-job, receiving mentorship from old, grumpy, cantankerous seniors like me, that you take for granted as we hobble across the road. And so those guys, you probably want to stop and help walk them across the road, or walk me across the road, because it'll be me that'll be helping you develop your career. So my current job, what leads me to my current job is that I got out of U of A. I was a consultant, like most civil engineers have. So I was a consultant working in heavy industrial, oil and gas, paper, pulp and paper. I've done jobs as a consultant throughout Alberta and Northwest Territories. At one point in time, I designed the largest hopper for the diamond mine, 300 kilometers north of Yellowknife. So that guy was, that's me. If it's still working, great. If it isn't, 10 years has passed, and so I plead ignorance. And so with that experience, I thought, why not? So I let the entrepreneur blood took over. I started a design build company with two very bad business partners. Screwed me over. I lost some money, some time. With that, however, 5 years out of school, I won a position at Dow Chemical, beating out guys that were in their 10, 15, 20 years of experience. I had 5 years of experience under my belt, and I walked in as a senior engineer with the company. I was part of their global team, looking at being responsible for the technical aspects of civil structural engineering in their expertise area, doing design and building their facility in Alberta. Left there as their engineering manager, and currently now all of that leads me to being a specialist at Enbridge, where essentially we develop, maintain, and steward and champion the application of all the structural and building standards and specifications for the company. I review and comment on the applicability, constructability, maintainability, and feasibility of all design packages coming into the company being put together by project teams and consultants. I ensure that design complies with the minimum requirements of governing codes and standards, as well as Enbridge's standards and specifications. Within that, it infuses all of our learnings, the lesson learned that what works and what doesn't work for us, right? I troubleshoot and make recommendation on path forwards. So that's helping day-to-day activities of our operation maintenance personnel, resolve issues, any civil structural engineering related issues that's on a day-to-day basis in aiding and helping us have a reliable and safe operation. So in short, our operations engineering at the Enbridge, everyone there, we are more or less the company's conscience, making sure that others are delivering a safe and functional design while complying with governing codes and standards and minimizing the company's initial investment and long-term cost of ownership. And we can talk about that more because that's very important. So how did my time at the U of A prepare me for an engineering career? Well, humbly, the U of A engineering program is a very good engineering program. It's up there. I would peg U of A with any university in Canada. When I did my graduate studies, I had guys that are from Queens, Waterloo, McMaster's, all the big Ivy League, the Canadian Ivy League universities from the East. They were doing their masters at the U of A when I did mine, and the reason for that is their prof was saying, if you want to be anybody in structural engineering, you go to U of A, right? The U of A and your program gives you the vocabulary needed to have the conversation with your mentors, with the people you work with. The mathematics of adding the 2 and 2 together, anybody can do that, okay? So these basic understanding and knowledge that you currently are learning will allow you to ask those questions, when to ask the questions, when and when to admit that you don't know. Okay, so when you start working, you rely a lot on your notes and your textbooks. So keep good notes. Make sure you don't sell all your textbooks because you're going to need them. And the operative word once you start working is the application of engineering theories and principles. So that's what the U of A did, is that give you the basics for that. So if I could go back and change the one thing about my personal journey, definitely I would have drink less, play less, and pay more attention to design and the analysis classes. So even though I got 8 and 9s at the time, it was 8 and 9s. I think now it's A and A pluses. I find that I had to reintroduce myself to my notes more often than I should, to really understand the theory and the concept of just not how to plug numbers into the equation, but where those A's and B's and X and Y's come from. Because in life, no one's going to give you the design loads or the geometry of the structure or the elements. You've got to define and you've got to determine all that on your own. Okay, so knowing and understanding the concepts and the theory is the very first step when you start working. That's where your mentors then can take that and work with you and develop you further.
Thank you for that very insightful response, Lam. So we have some questions from email and from social media, some panel-specific questions. So I guess for anybody in project management here, what does a project management role entail, and how can you prepare for it as you start your career? I guess we'll start with Serena again. Are you?
All right. I guess what does it entail? It entails, I would say, at least my job as a subcontractor, PM, is I would say it encompasses mostly communication. So I'm on the phone a lot. I'm doing up a lot of emails, a lot of back and forth with customers, with contractors, with the people who actually go out and build things, with, you know, superintendents and a lot of different people. So I would say the majority of project management, for me at least, is communication. So obviously try and develop your communication skills, your written and verbal. So obviously right now it'll be online or on the phone, but in person too, because it's really good to actually meet the people that you're working with. When you're working on a big project or something, that can be really valuable to actually have face-to-face meetings with people. And then a good other tip would be to develop a habit of documenting everything. Phone calls, face-to-face meetings, kind of everything. That's really valuable because months down the road, you're not necessarily going to remember exactly what was talked about. And you sometimes really need to remember what was talked about. So documenting everything, making kind of a little log of who you talked to and what days and what you talked about and specific things that were agreed to and all that kind of stuff can be really helpful in project management. And then staying organized too. Everything in construction tends to be pretty time sensitive. So staying on top of everything as best you can is really important, because if you kind of put something to the side, that probably will come back to bite you. And you'll wish you had done it when you had more time earlier. So, yeah.
If anyone would like to go next, feel free to go next.
Yeah, I can. So I'm a project manager with a general contractor. So just for those of you that may not be familiar, because when I was in school, I had no idea. General contractors are typically the ones that you see the large signs. So PCL, Graham, Bird, Clark. And they're the ones that kind of manage the project in general. And then they hire out subcontractors, like the company that Serena works for, to do scope specific. So we would hire a piling subcontractor, we would hire a cladder, a mechanical contractor, an electrical, to do the scopes that we don't have people that self-perform that kind of work. So my job as a project manager, and I echo Serena, is really about communication. It's about making sure that all the parties involved, the subcontractors that are out there on the site that are building it, the stakeholders within your company themselves, the client, the consultants that have designed the project, everybody is on the same page. And that can be challenging because project teams can be small, but they can also be enormous, and you have lots and lots of different people involved. So it definitely, as a project manager, is a huge amount of communication. Just a kind of sidebar, because it makes sense, Phoenix asked what the day-to-day life as a project manager is. So it depends a little bit on how the job is set up, in terms of if the owner has hired the consultants themselves or if it's through the general contractor. But really on a day-to-day, emails and phone calls, walks of site, looking at quality of installations. Safety is huge, making sure that everybody's following the safety protocols on sites, managing the schedule, managing the budget of the project. You can think of, it's kind of a weird analogy, but you can think of it like any real project management. You can think of like if you were planning your wedding, you have an end date, you have a certain amount of money, you have a number of parties involved, and a number of people involved. It's kind of a similar idea. I might be one of the few people that actually enjoyed planning my wedding because I enjoy project management. So, but that, I hope that answers that a bit on what the day-to-day life, the life is. I think, oh yes, how can you prepare for it as you start your career? Listen, and learn. As a project coordinator, which is typically what leads to a project manager, your job is to push that paper around until you start understanding what's on that paper, and what's being built, or whatever else is construction specific, obviously, is my experience. But that's really, really the key, is just never pass up an opportunity to learn about something. I'm 7 years in, and that like a fraction of what I know and what I can still learn is huge. So yeah, definitely learn.
That was a great analogy. If anyone would like to go next,
yeah, so David and Scott, you guys got anything to add, or you don't all? take my kick.
I was just going to add that even as a consultant, kind of in a more design related role, as you grow and maybe more so on the new construction side where you've got an internal team that you're managing, project management is huge. So I consider project manager to be one of the many hats that I wear as well. So I'm managing projects, and just like in a construction project, I'm managing the budget on a project from the viewpoint of a consultant. So I'm managing our internal budgets. I'm managing our client's budget when we're working on behalf of our client as a project manager. And I think a lot of careers kind of tend towards management in some way. So a lot of those skills I think kind of overlap and are definitely rhyming across whether you're a project manager by title or otherwise.
Scott?
I think yeah, pretty much what I was going to say is already being pretty well echoed throughout. Just a big focus on communication and building those relationships would probably be the biggest one for me.
So I've been very fortunate. I get to sit on all four sides of this box. So I'll start off. A project manager role is responsible for scope, cost, and schedule. It's the holy trinity of project engineering and project management. So you're going to coordinate all relevant activities from developing scope to detailing out all the engineering activities to procuring the equipment, awarding your contracts to your construction company like a Graham or the likes, and then overseeing your project team, your construction team, all your inspectors, and so on. So you're taking an idea, someone's idea, and then putting it on paper, and then building it and putting it into operation. So that's in a nutshell from cradle to grave. Okay, so it's like you're a chef. You have all these ingredients, right? You've got the superstore of pantries. A good project manager will know what ingredient you need to throw into the pot and when in order to get that broth or that, whatever it is that you want at the end. Okay. David did touch on that project management is a skill that we all develop as we work. You cannot get away from it. It'll be to a certain extent to either managing a single discipline within a project in a design office, all the way to having 3 or 4 other project coordinators below you doing different silos within that project, and then you being able to piece all that silos, all the individual pieces of the silos together. Okay, in my opinion, project management is a soft skill that you learn and you get mentored on, and it is something that you develop over time and building upon each experience and each job. So each job's a little different, and it's based on time and experience and exposure. So to successfully manage a project, you need to know what is required in the project. So the Project Management Institute, or PMI, I think you all know, will tell you that you can manage any project. You take a course from PMI, you write the exam, you get these 3 nice funky letters, PMP behind your name. All of a sudden, you could do any project from building a house all the way to building a software like an IT project. Well, I could tell you, I built houses, I built industrial plants, but man, you will not get a very good project or a good product from me if I were to build you an IT related project. It's just not going to happen. I have no ideas about what the little zeros and ones do floating around all over the place, right? So I went through the PMP because, yeah, well, Lam, you're a senior engineer, you're a manager, you got to do it. I sat in, went to the remote class at SAIT. I think it was 6 modules, 6 weeks, several $1,000s worth of fees, and at the end, I'm no better off. That's my experience. Okay, so based on my experience, if anybody tells you that they can teach you to be a project manager sitting in a classroom, I would run away. Now, if somebody says, come work with me as a coordinator, be my right hand, and I'll mentor you the next few years managing smaller projects and then working your way up, that I believe you will become a very good project manager. Okay, but if somebody to tell you, give me a couple $1,000s, I'll teach you, and then you give me $900 every year so I could give you 3 letters after your name, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna be. I wouldn't do that. Not for me anyway. All right. So hopefully, Veronica and Serena, during your role, what I've said, I haven't stepped on your toes or anything.
No, not at all. I actually want to add to it if that's okay. Because there was a question there about certifications in project management and if it can give you the edge as a new graduate. In my personal opinion, not so much as a new graduate. There's a reason you have to do a certain number of years experience as an E.I.T before you can apply for a P.Eng. And that's because that in-field, hands-on, like Lam was saying, experience is invaluable. You're going to learn things that you can't learn any other way. Having those certifications, is it going to hurt you? No. But is it going to give you a major advantage? I would also argue no. It's getting that experience that's really going to help you. Some of the things that you could invest your time in, if you're looking specifically for me in the construction field, would be courses, and I think you have to do it in Eng 100, but CSTS, your construction safety training system, your first aid, kind of some things along those lines. Even your it's not WMIS anymore, but your GHS, your training, those kind of things are definitely valuable to an employer. A lot of employers will give you that training regardless, but it is something that could stand out on your resume and would be useful.
So, Jason, do you guys have time? Like, does the audience want to know the life cycle from cradle to grave as to when a VP will have a brain fart to all the way to the time where somebody like me will come in and air gap a facility and demo it?
Yeah, you could talk about it if you'd like.
Okay, so real quick in a nutshell. So an owner will identify a need. So for example, at Enbridge, we got a shipper, let's say Shell, got a new plant, oil sand plant up in Fort Mac. So they're going to be needing somebody to transport oil all the way down to Texas. So we'll look at our own system and says, okay, well, we could get our current system will take us all the way down to Chicago. And then now we'll need 2,000 miles of pipe from Chicago to Texas. So we'll then do the engineering and say, okay, well, what does that 2 miles look like? Okay, well, we're going to need to build 4 more pump stations. We're going to need to build a couple of terminals to hold the oil and so on and so forth. So with that, then we'll develop that we call it a PFD, so process flow map, right? High level, going from A to B, and then each individual of those segments, so each one of those pump stations says, okay, well, we're going to need a pump station here. We need to pump X amount of oil, say 1,000 meters an hour. So our process engineers will calculate that out and says, okay, well, you're going to need to increase X amount of pressure in order to get it down a 24-inch line. So then they develop a process P90. So a P&ID is a process instrumentation diagram. So that then is the roadmap. It's like you go to AMA, okay, let me take a step back. There's no such thing. You guys wouldn't understand that. It's like you go into Google Map and pulling up Google Map and typing in point A and point B, and Google will lay out a route for you. That's essentially what the PNID is. We take that, and then our project team, let's say that project is $10 billion. We'll then take that down into chunks. 3 pump stations, we'll give it to 3 project teams, or 1 project manager that will manage 3 teams that will design the 3 pump station. We'll also give the pipeline to another project team that will design with another consultant, right? And then any other infrastructure, we'll probably give it to another project team. Each one of those guys have their own project manager. They'll start by assembling, and they'll go out to a consulting firm and ask for an RFQ. Those guys will come out with a proposal, says, I'm ABC Engineering. We have the resources. Here's our expertise. It's going to take you 10 months and $2 million in engineering. Okay, well, you guys got the expertise, and you guys, it's a price that I can afford. Get started. So then the consultant will start. The consultant will have their own project manager working along with the owner's project manager. They'll then take the P&ID, they'll design out the foundations, they'll put together equipment specifications to buy the pumps and pipes and so on and so forth, assemble the detailed engineering package of how to build, and then they'll go out. The owner will then go to somebody like Graham and says, Mr. Graham, Mr. John and George Construction, give me a bid. And they'll bid, they'll come back, we'll take the look at the price and says, okay, Graham, looks like you guys got the expertise, you guys got the, maybe the lowest price maybe, or the most cost-effective price. Let's get started. So we'll have a kickoff meeting, we'll sit down. Graham will have their own project manager, who will then work with our project manager, with the owner's project manager, as well as the project construction manager. And in most parts, with the consulting team as well, they'll go through, identify any questions or concerns, then they'll start to break ground and start procuring additional supplies. In the design package, we'll have foundations. Graham will then sub that to our friend Serena, who will put together a price, and Veronica's team will then coordinate all the field activities along with the owner's construction management team. They work in tandem until everything is built. Once this gets built, then we'll go through and we'll walk the site. Most of the time, we'll require our consultant to walk the site to ensure that it's being built in compliance or substantial compliance to their design, right? We'll have commissioning packages for the instrumentations and so on, and controls. All that gets all good. We will then introduce that whole project and turn it over to operations. Operation runs it. Our maintenance people will maintain it. 50 years from now, we no longer need that facility. Then we'll air gap the facility, and we'll demo and put the land back to the as found state today, right? So that's in a nutshell from cradle to grave on somebody's brain fart to all the way to making money and then demoing the facility. That helpful in any way to tie all 4 sides of the box together?
That's very good. Thank you. Now, I guess a general question to everyone here. It's the age-long question. Does GPA matter to an employer?
Okay, so I'll take that on. So I've hired co-op student all the way to senior engineers, contractor. I've awarded contracts. I've hired the tradespeople as well. To me, I'll ask you for where you got your education, because if I'm worth my weight in salt, I would already know what type of education you receive at what institution. So if you graduated from the University of Antarctica and it's just you and 3 other penguins, I might not want to have you on my team. But if I know that, yeah, you received your master's from the U of A, and I know half of the guys that teaches there, there's a very good chance that you're going to be at the top of my list. I don't look and I don't care about your GPA. The way I look at it is, um, I'd rather have somebody with a 2.9 GPA but have a passion for structural engineering than someone with a 4.0 and just wanting to use my position that I have available as a stepping stone to do project management, for example. I had an interview, one 4.0 guy called the co-op office the very first thing in the morning of the day of the interview. Co-op office says, "So Lam, he can't show up for the interview, but can he call you?" I said, "Sure." So he called me. He was in Hawaii. Decided to go on vacation, and I said, "Well, why do you want to do structural engineering?" "Well, I really don't. I really did structural engineering during my third work term. I spent 4 months in a design office, so I already know everything about structural engineering. I really want to do management." And so the interview ended up pretty quickly after that, because I told them at the time I had something like 12, 13 years experience under my belt with a master's degree, and already owned and operated a company and designed and built at that stage probably close to $1 billion worth of infrastructure for the company. And I figured I only knew probably 10% of what I needed to know to be successful in my role. And this guy had 4 months as a co-op student in the design office, and he already knew everything. So there was nothing I could teach him. So I went that same year. I gave that position to a young lady who had at the time the equivalent of 7.0. So that would be what, maybe a C plus or a B, something like that. In today's grade, just mediocre, right? An average mark. She turned out to be one of the best co-op students I ever had, because her passion was structural engineering. From the very first time she said that she could remember playing with Legos, she wanted to do structural engineering and build infrastructure, build things. And yeah, she stayed with me for 8 months. Went back for the remaining 8 months of school. I got a phone call from an old buddy and says, "Hey, Lam, Sarah there, told me that she worked for you." And I'm like, "Sarah? Who's Sarah?" Right? And he says, "Well, she did her work term with you last year." I says, "Oh yeah." I said, "Hire her. If you don't, I would. If I had a position, I would have hired her." So he hired her. She worked with him for 4 years. Her husband got transferred down south. The company had an office down south. They wanted to keep her, so they transferred her down there so that she could still remain with the company. So yeah, you don't need to have a 4.0. You just have to have a passion and a willingness to learn and work, and of course be mentored.
Awesome. If anybody would like to add anything else, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there might be some very, very small, super specialized fields not likely to be found in structural and construction, but the GPA may matter. They may look at it. But really, it's the fact that the U of A has such a reputation. It's the reason the U of A's plagiarism and cheating standard is so high, because anything like that can taint their reputation. And the fact that you have a degree from an accredited university is going to be enough for 99% of employers. It's really, like said, it really gets into the culture of the company and whether or not you are going to fit into the culture of the company. When I interviewed at Graham, I actually had 2 interviews. I had the very formal with the operations manager and district manager, and what was your degree and what are you interested in and what can you bring to the company. And then I had a second interview that was a culture interview, and it was 2 of the project managers at the time, really just sitting around shooting the breeze, talking about just a little bit of everything, which I found out later was just they wanted to get to know me and understand if I would fit in with the culture of the company. So although I don't want to say GPA is not important, so go do it half for all your classes. Like that's not the point of this message, but it in terms of that level, 99% of employers aren't going to look at that. They're just going to look that you have the degree and the qualifications to do the job.
Yeah, just to add and clarify, when I said it doesn't matter, it does matter, because being lucky will get you into the door. Being good will allow you to stay in, right? So your marks do matter in terms of your knowledge and how successful you will be when you work. But for me, when I'm looking for a young engineer, I'm looking for somebody that I can trust, somebody that's willing to learn, somebody that's humble, somebody that will come to me when they don't know something. I rather you can have way more respect from me and most people at my stage of the game is if we ask you to do something, if you don't know, it says, well, you know what, I don't know, can you show me? Rather we do that than you go away 10 hours later, you've wasted 10 hours and you're frustrated, and what you gave is wrong, right? So the smart person will ask the questions, right? And that's what really, that's to me is way more important. Your personality, your humility, right? If you come to a senior who's been there and you know everything, well, there's nothing that they can mentor you, so they're going to go to the next person. So you will remain ignorant for the rest of your career. And I've worked with guys like that, and we could, as a senior engineer, we could smell BS a mile away, right? And you will get yourself into trouble. Okay, so practice within your knowledge, and don't hesitate to ask questions.
Thank you. Would anybody like to add anything else to that? All right. If not, I guess here's a more specific question to people in structural. Reed asks, what is your preferred material to design with and why?
David, you want to go first?
Sure. My favorite material to design with is, I don't know, concrete. And I like fixing concrete, and I like modifying concrete. It's fun. It's a bit mysterious, especially in the existing buildings world. You don't know what you're going to get, so there's a little bit of I don't know, getting to know the concrete involved in that, and I don't know. I think you can. There's so much creativity with it, and I'm not saying like you can make really cool shapes, which you can, but like how you detail your rebar and things of that nature. It's very malleable. So does that work as an answer? Is that a fair one?
Fair.
Cool.
So, I had a design build company doing fabricated structural steel. So you would think that that steel is my favorite building materials, but it depends on the job. all materials are my favorite. I've designed using concrete, using steel, fiberglass, so FRP, right? Carbon fiber. I've done carbon fiber. I was first in the company to reinforced, essentially rehabilitated a structure using carbon fibers. That was back in the early 2000s, about 20 years ago, right? When it was still in its infancy. And so it all depends. You learn to love every single construction materials. Other than timber, I believe timber is a fuel. It's not a construction material; it's a fuel. So when it's cold outside, you throw some into the pit there and warm you up. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys are living in houses now. It's not caves.
So you're a true industrial guy to heart. Then I like the timber stuff for a lot of architectural features, especially as you move closer and closer to the west coast. BC actually. I'm not sure if they still do. When I was doing my design project in fourth year, BC has regulations that buildings need to be designed with a certain amount of timber in them. So you can see some really cool soffit details, beam details, and things like that as you go further west in Alberta, or further west in Canada, sorry. Alberta tends to be a lot of concrete and a lot of steel, but
I also dispute Lamb's comments. Mass timber is very, very cool, and as Veronica says, it's opened such a world of possibilities architecturally, because a lot of the time our structure gets hidden. The it's very functional. It gets covered up. So when you can have a nice, beautiful, exposed wood structure, there's not much better than that.
Awesome. Scott or Serena, would you guys like to add anything?
I guess speaking about things that get covered up, most of what I would design, no one ever sees it. But that doesn't mean it's not cool. It holds everything up. And with piles, there's kind of really only two main groups. There is some timber piles, but that's really rare nowadays. It's mostly either steel piles of one type or another, or concrete. And I would have to say I prefer steel piles in general, just because I know as a project manager how many things can go wrong with concrete piles. And so I probably prefer steel. There's less room for stuff to go wrong on site.
So Veronica, don't undersell yourself. You are the foundation of everyone's work.
yeah. Yay, Serena, you guys hold it all up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Scott, would you like to add anything in closing?
In terms of my work, yeah, similar to Serena, lots of my stuff is not seen. We move a lot of dirt. So when you get a really good clay, it's binding together real nice. That's when we get excited. Believe it or not, pipes in the ground, plastic or concrete. Probably the best part is, yeah, when we lay down brand new fresh roads and you got that nice black asphalt. I always make a purpose of being the very first one to drive on it, just because I feel like I deserve it at the end of the project. And, you can't take that away from me. So that's probably my favorite part for sure.
Start writing that into your contracts.
I was going to say that asphalt smell is awful, but at the same time, it's so sweet because usually for us, it means the project's done.
Yeah, it's the smell of victory, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I guess another general question for everybody here. Mary asked, what should we be looking for in our first job after graduation?
I think I could lead off with this one. Really, I would say with your first job coming out, I think an important thing is to not be not have too much tunnel vision. Don't throw out those blinders right away and think exactly what you need to do and where you think you should be when you walk out. Similar to what Lam was saying, that that humbleness can go a long way. Starting anywhere really that is somewhat relatable, whether it's starting at the bottom or starting designing, maybe you're starting, you know, just doing those paper pushing type tasks. It's all a foundation. So where you start is not where you end, and just getting somewhere where you can start learning and hopefully find some good mentorship to start building that strong base foundation is really, I think, what you're looking for. And then as you work through that, you can just build and build and build, really. So I think, yeah, taking off those blinders when you come out and just being open to a lot of opportunities is really what you should be mostly focused on.
So for me, when you know, a lot of the younger kids or co-op students or new grads, they ask me, I always say two things. First is ask yourself, do you want a job that will give you 1 year of experience for the next 30 years of your career? Or are you looking for a job that will give you 30 years of experience each and every single year for the next 30 years? That will then start to shape what you want to do and how you want to navigate your career, right? So your first job is always your first job. You know, take whatever you can get, just like what Scott says, and start building upon it. The smart thing is once you start working, keep that first question in mind and start asking for jobs. When I was a consultant, when I first came out, I took on every single project that the company is willing to throw at me. I mean, I've been at some of the dirtiest places in Alberta. I was standing, so you know, this is not politically correct, but I'll paint a picture for you just to tell you how dirty some dirty can be. I was standing on site inspecting formwork, rebar, and a liner installation to cast a trench. It was so dirty. The water in that, it was the groundwater was up past my you know, this portion of my leg, right? My boots comes up to here. My rubber boots come up to here. Water level is here, right where my pants pockets was. I stood in that thing, walking the trench, making sure that, you know, everything was fine for the cast. Now picture this afterwards. I'm standing out in the parking lot before I hop into my car. I had to strip down to like nothing in order for me to drive home. I'm praying to God that the cop doesn't stop me. Right? Luckily, you know, there was enough cars in the parking lot to you know, to hide my yellowness, right? So that's some dirty work, and I was willing to take that on because that job, I had an appreciation of what it's like to fusion weld HDPE and what it's like. The details that my senior put together was very difficult to build to. So the contractor and the vendor of the HDPE, we had to work together in the field to find a way to fusion weld HDPE. So that type of experience you can never get by sitting in an office, right? So you know, once you start working, take on any and every task that's coming your way. Beg, borrow, or steal, and that's how you develop, and that's how you grow and you know, essentially be top of your field.
What I would recommend looking for is something that's going to give you lots of experience in a lot of different places. So that's really what I like about general contracting. And again, I didn't take advantage of career fairs. I should have, and I got really lucky into what I stumbled into. But general contracting, you get a little bit of everything all at once. And it's as you grow in your career, I am not an expert at anything in any stretch, but I know a lot about a ton of different things. I know a little about a lot of different things. So for me and the way that I learn and what I like to do in my job, if I could go back to just graduated me, that's what I would tell myself to look for is something that's going to give you a little bit of experience in a lot of different places, especially in that first couple of years, because that's really going to help you determine. Maybe you fall in love with the quality side of it. Maybe you fall in love with the environmental and the lead side of it, or the design side of it, or the estimating. But it'll help you kind of figure out where you want to go while getting experience in those other areas as well. The other thing I would recommend, if you're planning on going the design route and that's the way that you want to go, try to get some field experience first. There's a lot of days where I am cursing at consultants that have never set foot on a construction site, have never seen what goes on in our day-to-day, and yet are designing what we need to build. So if you have the opportunity to learn lots of different things and the opportunity to get in the field and get some hands-on experience, that's what I would recommend.
If I was 5 years younger, I would be guilty of your wrath, I'm sure. Yeah, so if you are in consulting in a design role, I wouldn't say that I necessarily got out in the field as much as I should have early on. If you are in the role of a designer, maybe ask your supervisor, hey, I'd like to go out with you to site or whatever to see what's going on, so that you really do start to understand that. Because once I got to site more, I really started to understand, oh, okay, I see why we can't use such and such rebar in such and such condition. It's highly valuable as a designer to be able to physically see what it is that you're doing and talk to the contractors and the trades on site and understand what their challenges are and why they curse at you.
Yeah, and Veronica and David definitely hit the nail on the head. It is no fault of the individual. I think industry as a whole, the way our industry is built, most of our consultants don't get out to site very often. You'd be lucky as a consultant to come out to site, have that 30-minute meeting, walk the site, take some photos, do some measurements, and then you're back in your office doing the design. A lot of the work that consultants pull together are not easily built. That's why there's people like me on behalf of my company, on behalf of Enbridge, where we will look at the package, we will make comment on the constructability of that design. A lot of project teams, when they come to me, they'll come back and it was a white piece of paper with some black markings on it. After I got through, it became some black marking on a red piece of paper, right? And that, no one likes to see that. And again, through no fault of the consultant, the design engineer. I had a project where I'm sitting across the table from the chief structural engineer of the design firm. He is their number one structural engineer. He designed a detail that allows roughly a little less than 2 inches of space, and he needs to put in bolts inside that space. So I told him, I said, not possible. But you know what? His designer showed that there's definitely enough room for a 3.5-inch thick washer nut on a 1/4-inch washer inside that space. So I told him, make a fist. Your fist, even my little baby hands, my fist is bigger than 2 inches. Now I said, now imagine tiny, 300-pound big of a man holding a torque wrench or holding a spud wrench. You think he's able to shove his hand through that gap to tighten the bolt? Right? So there's a lot of discontinuity. So again, getting that experience and being able to get on to the field is enormous. It is, you know, when I went through co-op, my very first job was a material technician. Even up to today, I still think that was probably one of the best co-op jobs ever. And I worked, you know, with Alberta Transportation and with Inline Cement during my co-op term. Total of the 5 work terms in three companies. It was HPT Agra at the time, who then got bought out by AMEC, who's now Woods, doing material testing. And it's like, material testing, oh man, that's like the dirtiest and yuckiest work. But you know what? How do you design a material if you don't understand how it behaves, right? How do you assemble how many bolts do you put in other than the numbers telling you that you need 4 bolts? If you've never touched the bolt, you never torque a wrench, you never strike a spark and melt some metal when you weld. All that experience is invaluable as a design engineer. Yeah, sorry there. It seems like I'm talking a lot and taking over there, so I apologize.
No worries. Serena or Scott, would you two like to add anything?
Yeah, that's pretty thorough.
All right. Okay. Question from Tony. If you find that you aren't getting the mentorship you are hoping for, how would you start that conversation with your employer?
Well, I'll start as the old man. For me, a open, honest, professional, courteous discussion is the number one way to interact with anyone when you start working. So if let's say you and you're working with me and I've just been too busy and I've been ignoring you, yeah, come in and says, hey, Lam, you got 5 minutes for a coffee? Everybody's got 5 minutes for a coffee, right? Sit with a cup of coffee and says, hey, look, yeah, I know you've been busy and you know, I'm struggling. You know, I definitely could use some assistance, some mentorship, some help, and it could be that, you know what, I'm sorry, I've been ignoring you. Yeah, I've just been buried in my own world. I'm gonna try to be more available to you. And it could be that, you know, I could set half hour every day in the morning to help you get started in the day, and then you know, another half hour at the end of the day, or an hour every other day that we sit down and just go through what you're working on to provide you with that opportunity, right? But a lot of times is that if you don't say or you don't ask, we may not know, and we might get wrapped up with our own responsibilities, and it just that's just you know, matter of fact, right? That's just matter of life. You do what you need to do to get work done, and there are times where you just completely forget about you know, about the other guy, right? The little guy. So yeah, open up that conversation.
So what do you do if your mentor does not respond the way that you would respond, Lam?
Well, then go to, hopefully in your office there are several seniors that you could lean on. So you know, when I was a consultant, I worked with at the time we had, well, I think it was 4 other senior engineers that I could draw upon. One of them, yeah, I think it was his culture, just doesn't like to share. You know, I would ask him and says, well, I went through the U V like you did. You should know this. As why are you asking me? Fair enough. Thank you very much. My other 2 go-to, they graduated back in '74. So it would be an equivalent of, you know, they were already in their 19th year of practice or so, right? And so those 2 guys happens to be classmates. And you know, I ask them the questions, and they've always been available to me. right? So when if the person that you're asking, if the senior is not willing to mentor, you probably don't want to learn from them anyway, right? So the ones that you want to learn from are the ones that's willing to make time for you. Like for me, at my stage of the game, I already built a career. I had a career, and in order for me to go any higher in my career with my former employer, I would have to relocate to Texas, and then from there to Saudi Arabia. That was back in 2012, right? And I wasn't willing to uproot my family and move to Saudi to build the at the time it would have been the world's largest petrochemical plant complex, and I wasn't willing to do that. And so when at that level, when they pull the chair out for you and you don't sit down, well, you don't have very, you run out of rungs in that ladder very quickly. And so, from there, I looked for other opportunities, saw the writing on the walls, looked at other opportunities, and got myself the position as the only civil structural technical guy on the Northern Gateway Technical Studies, the Enbridge, the Northern Gateway project that was can be built. And that project, you could find more about that project on the internet there. It got shelved. But at the time, back in 2012, 13, 14, it would have been the North America's single largest infrastructure project. It was in the multi-billion dollar. We would have had to level off mountain in order to build our terminal. And so I wanted a cap for my career, chase after the job, got the job, and once that project got shelved, found another home within the organization, and I've been there since. But yeah, no, if a senior's not willing to mentor you, you don't want to learn from that guy anyway or gal.
I think in the mentorship conversation, it's important to distinguish between managers and mentors. I'm in this really weird middle ground in my career where I have my mentors and then they've gotten me to where I am. And then I have conversations with some of the juniors that report to me that have referred to me as a mentor. And I don't see myself as that yet. They don't like it's not a direct relationship, and it's kind of this weird middle ground for me. But managers, everybody's going to have a manager. You're going to have somebody that's overseeing your work, somebody that's tasked with helping you grow in your career, and the company and overseeing really. And that person may or may not be a mentor to you. For me, my mentor relationships have really come more naturally and randomly from other people in my organization and people outside of my organization as well. And it's really, manager is kind of your dictated, for lack of a better word, company structure. Mentor really is that more personal connection that you have with somebody that can help you grow, and they may have shared experiences. They may have gone through similar things as you when they were younger, and can offer their advice. And so in finding that mentor can be challenging sometimes, but often it does happen naturally. You start working with somebody, or you hear of somebody else in your company that's doing something that's interesting. Go and talk to them. Find out. Most people like to talk about themselves and what they're doing. So go talk to them and find out what they're doing. And if you click, great. And if you don't, just keep looking. And further to Lambs, if somebody is not willing to help, like I have a quote that I like to keep in my office. Because I've had a lot of people help me get to where I am, and it's no exercise is better for the human heart than reaching down and lifting another up. So if there's somebody that's not willing to turn around and help you get up to where they are, it's not worth your time.
Jason, you're muted.
So since we are running a little bit low on time, we'll do the next few questions in a kind of quick fire style. So keep it short and yeah, let's hope we get all the questions down. So speed round. What was your favorite project? We'll start with maybe Serena this time.
Probably the projects I remember most tend to be the bad ones. They stick in your mind. But probably my favorite, I guess, would be we did a lot of the foundation work for the new Midway at Fort Edmonton Park. So that was pretty cool. Getting to know that my work is helping to hold up the Ferris wheel and stuff that's going to be there. So that's cool.
Awesome. Let's have Scott go next.
I was on the project south end Edmonton there with the new Amazon distribution center and everything else. I think that one was pretty fun just because it was such a big crazy client, and it's just interesting to be a little piece of that crazy empire that they're seeming to build very quickly.
Awesome. David?
If I was to pick one, I would say we had a I worked for a year in Calgary, and when I was there, I had a project at the other university. Their main electrical vault for the campus serves 26 buildings, and it happens to stick out from the footprint of the building. And the slab over it was about 50 years old, and all it had for waterproofing was a corkboard on the underset, or a corkboard on the underside of the slab. So while the vault remained active, we ripped that slab off, put a new structural slab, waterproofed it, put a topping slab on, and yeah, no accidents or injuries, no power shutdowns. It was very, very exciting, rewarding.
And on to Veronica.
My favorite is probably the first job I did. If you look beside the Walterdale Bridge downtown next to the power plant, there's Epcor Rossdale's water treatment office, and that was my first job. And it wasn't the job itself that was the project itself is pretty standard for a lab and an office building, but the ground that it's built on is part of the original Fort Edmonton and the original fort. So we had a full-time archaeologist on site whenever we were digging, and her job was just to watch that earth coming out of the ground. And you'd have a big bucket going in, and she'd stop, and she'd find this like tiny little bead or little needle or little something, and it just was amazing. And all the stuff that we pulled out of the ground there. Found ice pits with animal bones that they would have used to keep meat from spoiling, and corners of old buildings and scissors, and just it was really cool digging. And it was my first job, so it I think forever will have a little piece of my heart.
And finally, Lam.
Well, I was, I'm glad that was last because I was going through 25 years of work and trying to figure out which one is my favorite. Actually, I would have to say I have two. Both has its own challenge, and I think the reason why they're my favorites is because they have their own challenge. One was a structure to support a 2.2 million pound reactor. That was down in our my former employer's apprentice site. So that one was good because we brought in a crane, and it was the largest crane in North America at the time. It was a 660 with a super lift, and I think Veronica, you would appreciate that more than anyone else. To lift that reactor in place. So it was a crawler. Cost us $1 million to mobilize that crane. That's just to bring that crane onto site. Yeah, the tracks was I'd say probably a good 2 to 3 times taller than me. So that one was a good technical challenge from a design perspective. And we did not use steel piles for that one, Serena. That was purely concrete piles. That was a 6-foot bell piles that we had to go down to bedrock. The other one that I particularly was near and dear to my heart because we had to build a 100-foot tall structure with a 20 by 20 footprint inside the middle of an operating facility. And so we couldn't build stick up. What we did was we took the road and we built it horizontally. So the highest portion of that structure on the ground was 20 feet tall, 120 feet long. Then we used 2 cranes, lifted up in tandem, and walked it in from the road and dropped it into place. So there's, when you're looking at your design projects, and this is the key, is always keep in mind before you put pen to paper is how am I gonna build this? And once you determine the how, then you could start looking at, okay, what am I gonna build? And then design that what to satisfy the owner's or the scope's requirement, right? There are times where you have to build to the way that you're gonna design, and then there are other times where you design to how you're gonna build. You got to be able to juggle and go back and forth, right? And that's then it's based on experience, mentorship, and it's just sitting there and grinding it out before you start any design project. Even in school today, take a quick 5, 10, 15, half hour, close your eyes and think of 3 solutions. Pick the one that you think you'll be able to build cost effectively, and then chase after that one. Okay? Because once you pick up your pen, you just tunneled your vision, and that's all you're going to do is just that one path. Does that make sense?
All right. Very insightful.
Yeah, that's all.
So next question for everybody again. Most favorite and least favorite class in university? I guess we'll go same order again, starting with you, Serena.
All right. Oh man, a long time ago now. Probably my favorite class was actually weirdly my capstone in geotech. I really liked it. It was just really well set up the year that we did it. And the guy that taught it, Rick Chalternick, he was a really good prof, and he just knew a lot. We had some TAs that were awesome. Yeah, it was a really good class. And then my least favorite, it might have been my structural capstone, because it was the prof, he just kind of read off of his slides. He didn't add anything in lectures, and yeah, there was very little direction. We were kind of on our own in the design. It was just, yeah, it was an interesting class, but yeah, not my favorite.
All right. We'll go on to David.
The answer to both questions is the one that I failed. Math 201.
Any reason why?
Well, I mean, obviously it was the worst because I failed it, and it was the best because I learned the most from it on a more holistic kind of perspective.
Awesome. Well, Scott.
Least favorites, honestly, like any of the math ones. I just did not like I made it through it, but it wasn't a fun time. The maths were definitely not the best part. I think my favorite one was the one geology class we had, or the rock class. I had a blast in that one.
Yes.
Yeah, like picking all the different, like those little tests that you did in the labs, and you had to decide which rock was which. I thought the whole class was just a fun game. It was the best. Yeah, those would be my picks. More rocks, less math.
I forgot about that class, but yeah, that was a good one for sure. I hated EngPhys in first year. EngPhys was the first time in my academic career that I didn't understand something that was being taught to me. and it was frustrating. It drove me crazy. Knew I didn't want to be a mechie because of EngViz. EngViz was the worst. The best non-engineering class, I guess, when I was going through in first year, we still had the option to do an elective. English hadn't moved to first year yet. I think that's something that's changed more recently. But non-engineering favorite class, I did classics. I took Greek art and archaeology, which has always been a passion of mine, and it was a really cool course. It was fantastic. Favorite engineering class was probably law. I think it's 420. The professor, I hope he's still there, was just fantastic. It was like story time with grandpa every class, and you just listen to all these cases that he had done and the career he had, and I really, really enjoyed that class.
All right,
Well, I'm surprised that none of you guys chose Engineering 100. I think that was that's your first year where you sit and you just don't do anything. It was like a freebie. It was an hour of right? I think that's
See it now.
Yeah. Fun side fact, they've completely revamped it this year. I think,
actually,
David, you were a mentor, right?
Yeah, it's actually useful.
David and I were both mentors, and they now link first-year engineering students with real-life mentors that have made it through to help first-year students. So they've definitely revamped that program.
Okay, no, I think that any class that gives you hands-on, like for me, it was the design class where you could apply all that theory, right? You could see something at the end. Somebody could says, give me a steel beam that's 20 feet long that support 1,000 pounds. That something that's tangible that you can apply. To me, that's definitely those were my the fun class. The one that I disliked the most is continuum mechanics, where nothing was solid. And if you guys, anybody who wants to do their graduate studies in structural engineering, you need to take one more of those classes. And when I went through, it was Dr. Rudy that taught that class. And,
it was when I went through too. That's how long we've been there. Yeah.
Each year he fails 4 kids. So he'll put you on the list. The bottom 4 gets to do it again. So I sat beside the guy that was one of those 4. And first day he's flipping out his binder and says, "Oh man, you're so lucky. Your friends gave you all their notes." And he looks at me, it's like, "No, these are my notes from last term or last year." I'm like, "Oh crap! I'll take the boots out of my mouth now." So that. I got a 6 in that class, and that was the passing mark. I'll bet you I was the number 5 guy on that list, and then there's 4 more below me because that was the lowest I've ever gotten in any of the courses, and I was just thankful. You just couldn't believe how thankful I was to pass that class. So, continuum mechanics, where nothing is solid.
All right. So I guess the time is now 7 p.m. To the students, thank you for coming and giving our panelists some great questions to answer. And to our panelists, thank you for taking the time out of your busy professional lives to foster and give us knowledge to the next generation of engineers. I know we didn't get through all the questions, but like our panelists said, feel free to reach out and connect with them. They're on LinkedIn or email or whatever contact information they provide. So I believe there's also a networking and an expo event after this as well. So if you guys would love to attend, that'd be cool. Thank you again for coming.
Jason, are we going to get kicked out right away, or could we answer some of those questions until...
Yeah, you guys can keep answering questions if you like.
Wilson's question about traditional really speaks to me because that was me. I did summer programming for kids during my summers in between engineering, so not engineering related whatsoever. Like I ran summer camps, took kids on field trips, like not engineering at all. And when it came time to find a job, I struggled a bit, and I was worried because my resume would look different than a lot of other people's. But what I really found to be beneficial was I took the work experience that I did have and applied it to the kind of job that I wanted. So in those summer programs, I was responsible for managing a budget. I was responsible for scheduling, booking facilities, keeping track of 30 children in West Edmonton Mall. Like, it just, there were skills that definitely translated over, although not directly engineering, translated to project management. So there's definitely a way to find how those skills transfer. The one I struggled with, I worked at a golf course driving the beer cart. So that one, friends told me I should put on as hydration engineer, but I left that one off the engineering resume. But so if you or even if you're a co-op student and you're not able to find a placement, because I know that can happen, it is not the end of the world. Every job is going to give you a little bit of experience, although maybe not directly engineering experience. Still going to get some experience from it.
Yeah. So to echo that, I volunteer with a PEGA to do these mock interviews and mock resumes. And one of the things I always tell the students is that your resume, when you write your resume, you want to look at the transferable skills and identify the transferable skills. So believe it or not, the guy that's sitting there stocking shelves at Canadian Tire developed a customer service type skills that would lend itself to be very good in a consulting world. So for example, you're stocking shelves and a guy like me comes in and like, I've been, walking around the last 10 minutes and I can't find this. Used to be right here, right? And if you come right up toe to toe with me and you said, you're an idiot because we moved it 3 shelves over. Well, that's not going to last too long, right? Because you're going to be having a conversation with the manager pretty soon. But you could say, hey, Lamb, I'm sorry, sir. We moved it over there because we ran out of space, blah, blah, blah. You calm me down. That is the type of skills as a consultant, for example, after 3 months of design work, and you gave me something that I looked at and says, oh, no, this isn't right, David. I asked you for a building that's 4 stories, not 3. Now I can't build this. Then David says, well, Lamb, you remember we had a meeting 2 weeks ago or 3 months ago with the city, and the zoning only allows you for a 3-story building. Oh, yeah, I forgot. But if David went up and says, Lamb, you're an idiot because 3 months ago we had a meeting with the city, well, that's going to be the last project that David's ever going to design for me. And probably be the last project David will ever design for the company that he's working for as well.
I was going to say, if you wanted a 4th story, I'd call Serena for some underpinning.
That's right. So those kind of transferable skills. So the key is you got to be smart enough to look at what those transferable skills are, identify those, and market and sell yourself to the potential interviewer, right? Because when I go and I look at the resume and I'm looking for and building my team, I want to make sure that I'm the dumbest guy in the room once I assemble that team. Because there's no sense in me hiring somebody that's dumber than me. I might as well do it myself if I'm like that, right? I want someone that's smarter than me. Doesn't mean that you have more experience than me. It just means that you're going to be a smart person, somebody that I could mentor, somebody that I could give directions to, somebody that could independently think, right? Somebody that could grow and be productive. Because after all, I'm in business to make money. And the only way I'm going to make money is by getting you to work smarter, not harder, and make me money, right? As a business owner, as a senior, taking care of the company, I want you at your best all the time. And so you got to keep that in mind, tailor your resume, and during the interview, you got to convince me that you are the best candidate. You got the right personality, you got the right aptitude, and you got the passion to do, got the passion to learn. Because you come to me and you know everything, yeah, well, I'm going to feed you to the dogs. Because I will make you cry. Done it. Scott's smiling.
All right.
Okay. But there's that one question there. Getting an experience after
Yeah.
bachelor and continuing masters. I really want to answer that for Abdul if he's still there. I did my master's part-time. So I graduated, started working. I took a year off between graduating and starting my master's. So I figured it was a lot easier to buy my way into the university than it is to buy my way into an employer. So I finished school in December, got a job in February, and then the September after that, I was going to start my master's, but I delayed it for a year. So I started my master's the year after. So I took one course at a time. So I did my MEng, one course at a time, and it was probably the toughest 6 years of my life. I had a full-time job, a young family. I had, we had a baby during that 6 months, during that 6 years. Actually, we had two babies during that 6 years. And it was most stressful. However, it was also the most rewarding from a professional standpoint is that when you work, as you work and you take the courses, you apply what you learn from the textbook to your project. So within that 6 years, I went from somebody asking my mentors a lot of questions, right? And who I still keep in contact to today. They're in their one guy's in his 80s and the other's in his 70s. Oh man, I'm old. Right? And we still have coffee to today. But I went from somebody asking them questions, and at the time they were still working. At the end of the 6 years, they were asking me questions, and the question they asked was, those were brain scratchers, right? And so it's just being able to apply what you learn right away versus spending 2 years learning, and then you walk out and says, okay, well, I just forgot what I learned last year. So sometimes the harder path is the more rewarding path, and that's for me. That's what I did, and if I have to do it again, I do it again. If I was, the owner of a company, let's say I got David working with me in my company, definitely I would encourage him to do his master's part-time, give him the hours he needs, and give him the financial support he requires to pay for the tuition. Because, boy, is it ever a game changer as a structural engineer. You get your master's. There's, especially with the MEng route, that's 10 courses. I've probably shortened my or increased my experience in those 6 years 4 times because of the master's program.
My master's program experience is a little different, but I did an MSc in construction. I went right from undergrad right into my master's, and then from master's to working. So for me, I figured if I didn't do it right away, I wasn't going back. And I had heard that from a few people. When you get out of the student mentality and into the making engineer money mentality, it can be hard to go back to school. So that's why I made the decision to go right away. The other decision I made, or the other reason I made that decision, was because I wasn't getting offers where I wanted to be. So I thought if I went and did a bit more schooling, I would end up where I wanted to be, and that did work out for me. But the one downside to the way that I did it, and touched on it, I didn't have that experience. I didn't have the field experience of seeing things in order to be able to write my thesis. And I got a little bit of it during my master's program. The program at the U of A, specifically the construction program, is world renowned. It's fantastic. And I did get some experience that way, but that probably is the one thing that could have made that experience even more rewarding, is if I had seen a construction site and seen kind of the processes and then gone back and learned more about it. I don't regret the way that I did it, and it worked out well for us, and where I'm at in my life. But that's kind of the pluses and minuses of the way that I went. So
I'm just gonna take the opportunity here to plug the NJAC PD and Mentorship podcast. We've actually got, we're working towards getting a couple of, I think it's going to turn into a series of episodes specifically discussing graduate degrees, whether it's engineering related or if it's, I don't know, I think we're trying to get people that have gone less conventional routes into things like law and medicine and things like that. So stay tuned for those to come up. I think they're available pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts. I don't know about Spotify, but Apple Podcasts and the Google Play and everything. And that'll be a long format conversation on that kind of thing, graduate studies and all that's entailed with those.
Throw in the text there, unless Serena or Scott have anything else to add with regards to grad studies. Caitlin asked about structural design. So I spent about total of 18 years doing solid design work and construction at the same time before joining Enbridge and pretty much taken on an oversight type role. So I don't do the WL²/8 calculations every day anymore. Although I unless somebody gives me cause to check their numbers. But on a day-to-day basis, when we're doing design work, Caitlin asks us, do we use AutoCAD as engineers? For me, it's yes and no. So I have designers that'll pull together the drafting for me. So I provide hand sketches, and my sketch would be very similar to what you would see in a for example, I'll show you real quick. I don't know if you can see this. So this is a quick check that I did the other day because I didn't think what I was receiving was really good. So again, your WL²/8 and my little beaver there. But the sketch that I was talking about be something like this. So you as a design engineer, you have to be able to provide a detailed sketch to this level, which is essentially what my designer or a designer would take and draft this and include this into a drawing. So the courses that you take in drafting, you may not need to remember which button to click on to draw a line, but you've got to be able to pull out a pencil and a piece of paper and be able to hand sketch something like that. Okay, so this here is a proposal, real quick. This is a proposal for one of our projects. They're going to fabricate roughly 500 of those, stick it underground, and so that's the type of work that you got to be able to do. Yeah, all the design courses that you learn, I think in the undergrad you only learn one steel design course, and that's just designing elements, just similar to that last sketch.
All right.
So hopefully that answers Caitlin's questions.
Looks like everybody's heading over to the networking event. Would anybody like to add anything in closing or any last remarks?
Yeah, no. Thank you very much for having me. I like to point out all my pitfalls so that hopefully you guys don't fall into the same pit as me, because I'm already there. And I need my elbow room.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to shout out to everyone that did join tonight. You're doing yourself a good favor, taking up time on an evening to hop into something like this and hopefully learn a few things. So